Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL round 12 betting review video. Here we're going to go through all 5 games from the round and what a round it was. All 5 underdogs winning their games outright. We're going to break each game down from a betting perspective. We're going to look at the odds, where the money went, who covered, how they won the game, did it go over under the total, and just break down these teams' forms that have now gone through this game and give you some stats and some information that you can use moving forward for your bets in round 13, 14, and so on. As I said, all 5 underdogs won, covered the spread obviously in all of them. That means so far this season, underdogs are now 52-41 against the spread. I went through and added up. If you had backed all 5 underdogs to win outright in a multi, it would have paid, based on closing odds, closest to kickoff, $135 odds. And what you also might notice is the first 4 games, so the Dolphins beating the Bulldogs 44-8, Eels beating the Seagulls 30-10, Knights beating the Panthers 25-6, and Roosters beating the Sharks 42-16. All 4 of those wins were by the 13+ margin, and 3 of the 4, except the Knights Panthers, which was a 19-point margin, were by 20+ points. But let's just focus on those 4 as a 13+. If you had taken all 4 of those teams into an all-up at 13+, it would have paid $2,315 odds. So $5 on that would have paid well over 10K. But I don't recommend you doing that. I just thought it was interesting as like one of those rounds. Crazy results, miles off what the betting companies had handicapped these games at. And this was the first time, I think, since 2018 where all underdogs had won in a round. So basically 7 years, almost to the week, where this last happened. Closest game of the round, the Raiders winning in wet conditions over in New Zealand, beating the Warriors 16 points to 10. Away teams won and covered 3 of the 5 games. So far this season, though, home teams 49-44 against the spread. And of the 5 games, 3 went under the total and 2 went over. Pretty obvious the 2 that went over, the Bulldogs and Dolphins and Roosters Sharks. On the season, 54 games have gone under the total and only 39 have gone over. So strong trends overall in the season towards games going under the total. We'll break down game by game and also some of the recent trends for these teams. All the betting data you can view in the NRL Best Bets, which you can access through the description. And also, this week, I've just added a brand new feature to the NRL Bet Finders, and that is the splits data, which I'll give you a quick look at here. Now you can break down every single team by all the possible situations. If you followed my videos for a while now, or even if you just knew this is really important, one of the things I pay close attention to is the situational factors for a game, like whether teams are at home or they're on the road, if it's a day game, night game, if it's in good conditions or poor conditions, are they on short rest or long rest, all those kind of different things, how teams perform in that situation, depending on the day of the week, etc. Now you can break down every single team's performance on the season by all those different situational factors. So for the Broncos at the top here, this section here is their attacking stats, so their points they score in the first half, second half, meters per point, their run meters, post-contact meters, and you can see how that changes based on the situations. For example, for the Broncos, in day games, they're only averaging 17 points from their 2 day games, but in night games, they're averaging 28 points. And particularly in night games, their meters per point comes down to 67.5 compared to 134, even though they're averaging more run meters and post-contact meters in day games. So they're being a lot more efficient with the ball. Same goes for fine and wet conditions. On days rest, when they have more rest, they're averaging slightly more points per game. Games after a loss, so the following week after losing the game prior, they're averaging 25.2 compared to 22.4 after a win. Particularly in the first, they're averaging 3.6 more per game. And obviously these stats will build on as we go through the season. We're getting close to the halfway mark. Interesting also for the Broncos, when they're a favorite in away games, they're performing a lot better in their attacking metrics. That's largely due to the win early on in the season against the Roosters. Then you can also look at the tries scored. Where are they scoring tries based on the situations? Their defensive stats based on all the different situations. Are they stronger defensively in certain spots? For example, Broncos against top 8 teams are only conceding 17 points a game, whereas when they're versing the bottom 9 teams, they're conceding 25.4, so 8.4 more in what you would consider to be easier opponents. Then you can also look at the different statistics based on the margins and game total points. So game totals against top 8 sides averaging 51 compared to 47.1 against bottom 9 teams. Second half points are significantly up at just over 30.5 against the top 8 sides. So really good information. You can also view the last 4 games and how that matches up compared to their season overall, and look for spikes in different areas that you can capitalize on, particularly in your first halves and second halves, total points, that kind of thing. And that goes on for every single team. So this tool is now in the Best Bets membership, which you can access through the description. Plus, there's the new rankings tabs for all the different metrics. So right here, looking at the last 4 games by margin. So across their past 4 games, the Storm are averaging the biggest margin, closely followed by the Roosters. Those 2 teams clear out on top of everyone else. Then you have this run here of the next 8 sides averaging a positive margin differential across their past 4 games. Roosters are the best first half side. Knights are the second best first half side across the past 4 games. And interestingly, like Broncos right here, they're the number 3 first half team, but the worst second half team. And further down, you can break that down. So attack rankings in the first half, they're averaging 17 compared to 5.5 in the second half. And defensively in the first half, ranking 3rd compared to 16th defensively, conceding 19.5 in first halves. Using this rankings tab, you can really keep an eye on how teams are performing over recent games and look for where they're doing really well. You see Knights have jumped right up to the number 1 side in run meters and post-contact meters, which has also contributed to their games being higher scoring because they're in better field position and also giving up lots of run meters to the opponent in recent weeks. This area's post-contact has been an issue all season for them, but interesting for you guys to look at and use these tools when researching your bets. So these tabs are all there for all the different splits as well. So definitely check it out if you like to research and use statistics. When you're betting on any sport, the more information you can have, the better betting decisions you can make. That's why I build out all these tools to not only help you guys, but also for my own bets as well. That's the reason I build out as many tools as I can to research games, because I want to see everybody winning on the NRL and every sport that you're betting on by the skills that you build up. That being said, let's get into the games from the weekend. First game on Thursday night, Bulldogs versus Dolphins. Bulldogs were pretty big favorites here, but the money came for Redcliffe. They were backed in from $4.25 into $2.68, and the game also went over the total. Dolphins covered it themselves and ended up being 36.5 at kickoff and had moved down from 41.5 due to the weather. This is the Bulldogs, just their second loss overall this season, and they've conceded 42 or more in both losses so far. Also for the Bulldogs, 4 of their past 5 games have gone over the total. Dolphins have covered 6 of their past 8 as an underdog now. 4 of their past 6 have gone over the total. Looking at how this game played out, it was a slower start for both sides. Jermaine Asako scored the opening try in the 11th minute, but then there was a 20-minute period before the Bulldogs scored their first try of the game. A couple of penalty goals during that period as well. Close to halftime, Jack Bostock put the Dolphins in front and they took a 14-8 lead at halftime. And then the second half was all Dolphins. They scored 5 converted tries, kept the Bulldogs scoreless, so 30-0 second half. Really good performance, and one that we've seen the Dolphins do a couple of times this season. They can really put those good second half performances together and blow out an opponent. Statistically for this game, Dolphins had the majority of possession at 55%. One thing I do is I keep notes on every team's performance so I can see how they're tracking, so I'll run through that. For the Bulldogs, this was their lowest score of the season, and they conceded 7 tries, which now makes it that they've conceded 4 or more tries in 4 of their last 5 games. 64% completion rate, really poor. In terms of meters gained, only 1,091 meters. This is about 650 below their season average. And with the 368 post-contact meters, that's almost 200 below their season average. The 546 post-contact meters the Dolphins gained, that was the second highest the Bulldogs have conceded this season. And also no line breaks for the Bulldogs for the first time this season, and a season high 7 line breaks conceded. The key factor for the Bulldogs here was the amount of errors and mistakes they made, along with the 33-13 missed tackles. But the 16 errors was near double their season average. And at halftime, when the score was 8-14, Bulldogs definitely weren't without a strong chance in this game. Prior to this, they'd won their last 7 second halves, but this game were minus 30. Meters conceded per point for the Bulldogs was 34.4. And their average on the season coming into this was 107. That's excluding the 2 games where they kept the opponent scoreless. So if you include those as well, the number is significantly higher. But yeah, they really struggled defensively in this game. For the Dolphins, this was their highest score of the season with the 44 points. Keeping the Bulldogs to the 1,091 meters. They hadn't kept anyone under 1,400 yet. So it shows their dominance in the middle. The Bulldogs could not make ground. And the 368 post-contact meters. For the Dolphins, they generally average almost 600 post-contact meters conceded. This was the first time they've kept an opponent to 0 line breaks this year. And the 13 missed tackles they had was much lower than what they've been doing previously. They'd had at least 30 or more in each of their past 4 games. Moving forward, the Bulldogs have the bye this week, and they have 18 days from this game through to their next match where they'll play Parramatta. And the Dolphins, they're also on the bye in round 13 and will face the Dragons at home in round 14. That'll be on Friday night. Eels comfortably beat the Seagulls 30 points to 10. Obviously winning and covering. They're $2.65 out to $2.68. The market for this game was a little bit weird. The money came for the Seagulls a little bit, then they went back out, they came back in, they went back out again. Slightly strange. The game went under 45.5 and moved down from 46.5 through the week. Parramatta have now won 2 games in a row, and they've also led at halftime in both for the first time this season. So up until the last 2 weeks, they hadn't led. So they'd tied, I think, once or twice, but trailed in every other game at halftime. They've covered 6 of their past 9 games, and also 8 of their past 10 have gone under, including the last 4. Manly have now lost 5 of their last 7 games, and their last 6 games have gone under the total. For the Seagulls, they scored first through Lehigh Hopsey off a really good flick pass by Tolu. Parramatta responded though with a couple of really quick tries in Semrani and Papali in the 22nd and 24th minute. Those were on back-to-back sets, which really got Parramatta up and about. Hopewada evened it up. He got a try that tied the scores at 10 points all. About 10 minutes to go until halftime, but Jack Williams put the Eels in front going to the break. They led 16 points to 10. Tongi scored first in the second half, followed by Jermaine Hopgood, and they were the only 2 tries of the second half. Eels also grabbed a penalty goal to push the margin out beyond 3 converted tries. So they had a 20-point lead with about 15 minutes to go, and that really put it beyond the Seagulls, particularly based on the way they're attacking in this game. This is back-to-back 20-plus point victories for the Eels, and they've scored 3 or more tries in each of their past 5 games. Certainly some improvements there. They've had at least 1,880 meters gained for the 3rd straight week. They had 1,884 in this game against the Seagulls. They've had more line breaks than their opponent. This game they had 5-3, but they've had more than their opponent for the 5th straight week, and only 8 errors for Parramatta in this game. Kept the Seagulls scoreless in the second half, 14-0, which nobody else has done this season. This was the first time that Manly have been held scoreless. They average 14.6 points in second halves, and they'd had at least 10 in every game so far this season. Completion rate was good for Manly at 87%, and like when you look at the stats, they really shouldn't have lost this game by 20 points. There wasn't a huge discrepancy between the 2 sides. 15 offloads for the Seagulls. They only scored 2 tries. Just their conversion rate wasn't really good. In terms of completion rate, the last 2 games have been in the mid-60s, so good to see them get this up to the high 80s. Good meters gained, but couldn't capitalize. They had 27 plays inside the Eels' 20-meter zone. Worst conversion rate in terms of meters per point. They had 177 in this game, but average on the season, 75. Based off of that, they should have scored about 24 points, considering they made almost 1,800 meters. They conceded 10 meters per run for the first time this season as well. Based off of that, statistically, the game should have been closer, but watching the game, the amount of times the Eels just went straight through the middle of the Seagulls defense, you can really see why. that Parramatta won the game, and you just felt like the Eels had turned up. And I think this was a real letdown by the Seagulls after getting the win last week up in North Queensland, coming back thinking this was kind of an easy game, even though they were without Cherry Evans. They were looking at an Eels side without Moses and Lomax, who early this season were really struggling without those two players, and the Seagulls didn't show up at all. Parramatta going forward will look to make it 3 straight wins against Penrith, and the Seagulls will play the Broncos at home, who the Broncos are coming off the bye. Panthers versus Knights. Newcastle won 25-6 and put this game away early, scoring 4 tries to none in the first half to lead 24-0 at halftime. Newcastle were backed in $3.20 into $2.55, and the game went under the 42.5 point total and moved down from 43.5. This was the Panthers' biggest losing margin on the season. They'd previously lost another game by 18, but this at 19, just slightly more. They've now failed to cover the spread in 6 of their past 8, and also 6 of their past 8 games have gone under the total. Newcastle, this was their 4th win on the year. They've scored 20 plus and led at halftime now in 3 of their last 4 games. Just their 3rd covering of the spread this season. Their last 5 games have gone under, and also 10 of their 11 games this year have gone under the total. As I said, Knights scored the first 4 tries. They put this game away early. Those 4 tries all came within the first 23 minutes. Fletcher Sharp scored in the 4th minute. Then Dylan Lucas scored a hat-trick in basically a 15-minute period. And from there is a long way back for our Panther side, missing so many players. Panthers scored the only try of the second half to Harrison Hassett, who dived over next to the post in his first game, and I think was one of his first touches in his career. But even though Newcastle didn't score in the second half, they always had this game well within their control. Panthers, their 6 points was their lowest of the season. 3rd time they've been kept scoreless in a first half. They conceded 2,125 run meters. This season, they hadn't conceded over 1,765. So all their other games were under that number, and that 1765 was the game prior to their bye, which was the previous game before this one against the Cowboys, which went to Golden Point, and they played the entire 10 minutes of Golden Point. So real concerns there in the middle, but obviously were missing a number of key players. So I don't want to read too much into that, particularly in their forward pack as well. The 751 post-contact meters, that was 220 more than they average as well. So you can really see how Newcastle won this game. They beat up the Panthers side in the middle, and Penrith really missed those players. They gave up a season-high 9 line breaks as well, and only managed a season-low 2 line breaks. The 5 offloads that the Panthers had was also a season-low, and 50 missed tackles, a season-high. Now, these numbers are all season worst for Penrith, and whilst I don't want to put too much emphasis on them because the lineup they had on the field in this game, they were still facing Newcastle. So it's not like this was against a really good attacking team or a really powerful forward pack or anything like that. So I definitely still have some concern over these numbers. For Newcastle, they were averaging 10.2 points per game through their first 7 games, but have now scored 20 plus in 3 of the past 4. So really turned it around a bit from an attacking perspective, and just showing a lot more enthusiasm in how they're playing across the past month, maybe aside from the game against Parramatta. One interesting stat when I was looking through, they haven't missed a conversion from their past 15 tries. This was also the 2nd game with over 2,100 run meters, similar to when they beat the Rabbitohs a few weeks ago when they won that game 30 points to 4. In terms of most post-contact meters, the 751, that was their highest of the season, but did give up the 623, which, as I mentioned, when we're looking at some of the split stats, they have given up 585 or more in every game. So it's only at least on par with their average, maybe just even a touch lower. They're ranked last in that category overall in the season. 27 missed tackles, though, was a season best for them, and also a season best 8 errors. Generally, spoken about this previously, they make a lot of mistakes. They average 14.6 and pretty much always are in that 14 to 16 error range. Whilst they did score 24-0 in the first half, they only scored the 1 point in the second half, and that makes it just 7 second half points across their past 3 games. Moving forward, the Panthers have 2 absolute must-win games coming up against the Eels and Tigers over the next 2 weeks. Pretty much, if their season isn't already over, it definitely hinges on these 2 games. If they don't win both of these against Parramatta and the Tigers, then they're completely done. And to be honest, like, they can't afford to lose either, because following that, they have the Warriors and Bulldogs after the bye. Newcastle versus the Dragons on Friday night, so they have a 6-day turnaround on the road for a second straight week. On Saturday night was the biggest upset of the round, the Roosters winning 42-16. Roosters were $2.55 out to $3.70, and the game went over the 44.5 point total. Roosters have now won 4 of their last 6 games and have covered 4 straight. 4 of their last 5 games have gone over the total. This was the Sharks' biggest loss of the season, and the first time they've conceded over 28 points, which the last time they conceded 28 was back in round 1 against the Panthers over in Vegas. Have still covered though 5 of their last 7, and their last 2 games have gone over last week against the Melbourne Storm. For the matchup here, Roosters got on top early and raced away with this game. They got the jump, scoring 2 tries in the first 10 minutes, both through Daniel Tupou. Both very, very similar tries, kicking to the wing. McInnes responded for the Sharks shortly after, which kept them in the contest, but Savala scored shortly after that, which gave the Roosters a 20-6 point lead at halftime. The Roosters weren't able to capitalize while Ronaldo Mulitalo was for that 10-minute period, so no point during that part of the game. Second half, it was 20-6 to the Roosters. Sharks needed the first try, but no, they scored that, followed by Xavier Va'a scoring his first try of his career, and from there, the Roosters were well on top. Kale Iro and Ronaldo Mulitalo both scored for the Sharks. They were the 2 players we highlighted as the try scorers in this game. Probably couldn't have gone wrong taking many of the leading try scorers for the Roosters either, with Tupou, Dominic Young, Noah Aze, and Tedesco all scoring tries. So probably would have hit a lot of try scorers on this game. How'd you know there was going to be 58 points scored? After those 2 tries through Iro and Mulitalo, the scoreboard wasn't looking too bad for the Sharks, but then late tries in the final 4 minutes to Tedesco and Dominic Young really pushed the margin out, and it was a 26 point final margin in this game. Roosters, this was the 3rd game of their last 4 with at least 36 points being scored. That's why over their past month, the Roosters are the best attacking side in the competition. They only miss where they haven't had 36 or more was against the Bulldogs. They've led at halftime in each of their last 4 games, and all 4 of those halftime leads have been by at least 6 points. They won the meters gain battle in the middle, which is definitely surprising considering the amount of outs the Roosters had for this game. The Sharks should have controlled the middle of the field, but they didn't, and the Roosters kept the Sharks to 8.6 meters per run, which is really low. They've kept opponents to 1,603 or less meters gained in 6 of their last 7. And that's really good, especially considering they were undermanned in their forward pack. In particular, like a lot of the Roosters outs for this game were all in the second row in particular. Overall for the Roosters, like most stats were on par with their season average. They didn't give up 40 plays inside 20 meters after giving up 49 last week. So they're giving teams opportunities close to the line, but their goal line defense is holding up pretty well. The Sharks, this was like that exact definition of a letdown performance after a big win the week prior against a top opponent, to try and come out and do that again the following week. They beat the Storm 31-26, but then hammered by the Roosters. Run meters and post-contact meters for the Sharks have dropped down a little bit lately. Definitely need to step that area up. They gotten away with it due to good attacking play by the backs, but they need to give themselves better field position in order to make sure they don't have games like this one. We're trailing at halftime for just the 4th time this season, but this was the first time they were trailing by more than a 4-point deficit, 14 in this game. They gave up 40.5 meters per point, which was by far a season worst. The last 2 weeks have been pretty poor. Last week against Storm was down around the 60 mark as well, so 51.7 average across the past 2. Prior to that, they are averaging 95.6 on the season. Though, keep in mind, the Sharks have played the top 2 most in-form attacking sides the past 2 weeks, so I don't want to be too tough on them from that perspective. Sharks, the past 5 games, have scored 10 tries down the left edge and just 2 on the right edge. They're a little bit predictable in attack, still scoring though, but I think their right edge is a real issue in terms of scoring at the moment, particularly with no Sam Stonestreet. So they're definitely going to need to figure that out through the bye. Followed by that, they'll have home games against the Warriors and Dragons. For the Roosters, they'll play Canberra this week. They'll have a one-day rest advantage, and Canberra will be traveling back from the game over in New Zealand. Speaking of the Raiders, they won another game this season. They moved to 9-3, beating the Warriors for the second time. Canberra were backed in from $2.25 into even money, and the game went under the 44.5 point total, which moved up from 43.5, which is really surprising considering the weather for this game. Warriors, this was their first loss since round 6 against the Melbourne Storm. They're still 8-3 on the season. 5 of their last 6 games have gone under the total. And for the Raiders, this was the second time this season they've beaten the Warriors. 9-3, they've covered 7 of their past 8 games now. Just 3 tries total in this game, and same number of sin bins as there was tries. Plus you had 4 penalty goals. In terms of penalties, set restarts, sin bins, there were 17 penalties in this game, 13 set restarts, and 3 sin bins, with Adam G refereeing. Luke Metcalf got an early penalty goal. Roger Chuvashek scored the first try of the game down the left edge, and it was a really good try to stay in play and then get the ball on the ground. Tom Starling scored the only try for the first half for the Raiders in the 31st minute, and then Jamal Fogarty was able to tie it up right on halftime, with the Warriors giving away a really dumb penalty, being in front of the kicker from the dropout. Something they didn't really need to do and could have gone into the break with a 2-point lead. Instead, it was tied at 8-all. The Warriors edged in front with a penalty goal in the 49th minute, and then Jamal Fogarty tied it up before scoring the game-winning try. In this game, there were 3 total sin bins. Canberra scored through Tom Starling whilst they were down a man without Corey Horsburgh on the field, and then Jamal Fogarty scored whilst Charles Nicole Klokstad was in the sin bin, and ultimately that was the difference in the game. The Raiders' ability to score whilst they were down a man, and also then take advantage of the period where the Warriors were down a man. This was a very even game overall, like little difference between the two sides. Slightly more possession to the Raiders, slightly better completion rate. They completed 1 more set compared to the Warriors. Meters gained, not much between them. Post-contact meters very similar, just the 1 extra line break, tackle breaks, missed tackles, all virtually the same. Set distances, basically the same. So you can see why this game was definitely a 1-score game. But the main factor that cost the Warriors here was 14 errors. The Warriors have had 4 games this season where they've made over 10 errors. Of those 4 games, they lost 3 of them, and the only exception was when they won in Golden Point against the Broncos at home. So for the Warriors, like, they can't afford to make mistakes, otherwise they lose games. They also got an equal season-high 10 penalties in their favor, and also 7 restarts they received. Adam G has reffed 3 Warriors games so far this season, and in terms of set restarts, they've had 11-2, 3-3, and 7-6. So they've restarted their opponent 21-11 in the 3 games with Adam G in charge. They scored 2 points in the second half, so they've scored 6 or less in second half in their last 4 games. So really relying on building a lead in the first half and holding on to it. This was the 5th straight second half that they've lost, but they've led or tied at halftime in each of the last 6. Raiders kept the Warriors 10 in both meetings this season, so it'll be interesting if these sides end up meeting in finals. Meters conceded per point against the Warriors, in terms of the Raiders, is 178.7, but against other opponents is only 71.5. So they've really been able to shut down the Warriors a lot more, like more than 2.5 times better than they've been able to do against the other opponents combined. But kept an opponent to 6 or less points for the 6th time in their last 7. But kept an opponent to 6 points or less for the 6th time in their last 8 games. They're averaging 7.75 points conceded in second halves across those last 8 weeks, even considering the Bulldogs scored 32 against them a few weeks ago. Warriors have back-to-back road games coming up against the Rabbitohs and Sharks before they'll have their second bye of the season. And the Raiders will play the Roosters this week and have 7 days rest travelling back to Australia. Looking at the ladder as it currently stands, Bulldogs still 1 game clear on top, followed by the Raiders and Warriors. Storm outright in 4th position on 16 points. Then you have the Sharks and Rabbitohs, who've moved up into 14 competition points. Then it gets really busy from the Cowboys down to the West Tigers, all on 13 or 12 competition points. Then 4 more sides in the Dolphins, Knights, Eels, Titans on 10 competition points. And realistically, when you look at it from 5th in the Sharks down to 16th in the Titans, there's only 2 wins between all those sides. So it sets up like for a very interesting second half of the season. That rounds out round 12. Looking ahead to round 13, interesting round. It's going to be like the key for this round is which players end up backing up from State of Origin on Wednesday night. That's going to determine the odds movement and likely the way I choose to bet the games coming up on this weekend. I'll be posting a preview for all the round 13 games later in the week, plus also the try scorer analysis where we'll go through the most likely try scorers. If you want to see everything I'm personally betting on the NRL and also be able to make sure the bets you're putting on are the best investments with your money, make sure you start using the NRL bet finders. Take advantage of the new splits tools for the second half of the season. The link to that is in the description. Plus, not only do you get access to that, but there's over 20 other tools in the bet finders that you can use to research games, to determine how many points will be scored, the margins, who's going to win, and also go through the betting history. And of course, you do your try score research with all the betting tools for that as well. Really appreciate you guys watching, following along on the channel. I'll be posting my State of Origin bets into the Best Bets membership as well, so make sure you're in there as part of that. And I'll see you guys in the video where we'll preview round number 13.